I'm going to kill myself, and it's your fault!
Unrailed is a game where you and up to 3 other people play as a dinosaur, or penguin, or gingerbread man, or Indiana Jones, and continuously build a railway for a runaway train, with the main objective being to get your train as far as you possibly can before it inevitably crashes. You do this by gathering wood and iron and feeding them into a wagon being pulled by the train to create new tracks, which you can then place down in whatever layout you want to keep your train going. This game can also be played single player with a little robot companion, who actually isn't too bad as a teammate, but as these kinds of games typically go, you'll have a lot more fun playing with people right next to you. Each time you start a new run, you're given 3 things: an axe, a pickaxe, and a bucket.
Dear God.
There's more.
No.
The axe is used for chopping trees to get wood, the pickaxe is for mining iron out of these brown rocks, and the bucket is used for collecting water that you can use on your train when it starts to overheat. Similarly, at the beginning of each session, the train will always start with 3 essential wagons: the crafter, which will automatically build tracks using the resources you collect, the storage where you put said resources, and the tank, which keeps the train engine cooled and will gradually go from blue to red as the train begins to overheat. And this all probably sounds fairly simple, right?
Wrong.
While these will always be the primary things that the gameplay centers around, the game will quickly ramp up the difficulty as you go by throwing new obstacles at you, such as environmental hazards like water or lava that need bridges to be built so that they can be crossed, black rocks that can't be mined, forcing you to find another path around them, and even these bandit guys that will grab your resources lying on the ground and chuck them off the world when you're not paying attention. But you don't have to just keep building non-stop though. Every few minutes you'll come across one of these stations, which do a few important things aside from giving everyone a short break, where you can regain your train of thought. Every time you enter one of these, you're rewarded with a bolt. These are a big deal because they allow you to upgrade the wagons currently on your train so that they perform better, and also let you buy new ones that all do different cool stuff. Like this one auto-mines the resources found around the train, and you'll always need resources to continue making tracks. Others, like this spooky ghost one, will let you and your team walk right through it, which is great because sometimes you'll accidentally end up trapping yourself because of how you lay the tracks, so this gives you a way out of that.
Let me out! Let me out! This is not a dance!
And this one makes dynamite. Another thing you can do here at a station is swap your wagons around. Like the game always has the starting wagons in this initial order when you begin, but swapping your crafter and tank around is probably better, both because the train can be cooled by dumping water on the tank or the engine, giving you a way to come from either side, and because tracks will always be needed at the front of the train, so it makes more sense to have the crafter closer to it. Overall though, it's up to the players to figure out what works for them, and this might change depending on which wagons you currently have. The final thing stations are used for is for purchasing a new engine, which costs more than upgrading or buying new wagons, but will let you move on to a new biome. This is something you'll want to do because the train will move faster and faster after each station if you stay in the same biome, and will only reset back to a slower speed once you've moved on, with this kind of creating a risk-reward situation where you can farm more bolts the longer you stay, but doing so will up the likelihood of the train crashing since it will be moving much faster. So there's a reason to do this gameplay-wise, and also just because they all look really pretty, so it's worth seeing them all. With this move comes a few changes to gameplay mechanics though, like this snow in the snow biome that forces you to move a lot slower than usual, or some biomes like the space one, switching out the use of the bucket from being a tool for cooling the train, to instead being a portable oxygen supply that you'll need since, you know, space. These different biomes are also all procedurally generated, so no 2 playthroughs will ever be identical. And this becomes even more apparent as you play on the higher difficulties, with the difficulty curve here getting pretty damn high.
What?
This is a good thing though because it gives players something big to try to overcome. I, however, am not one of those players, so you'll usually find me playing on the lower difficulties.
Weenie Hut Juniors!
The only advice I can really give here would be to do your best to collect as many bolts as you can, since they are the only way to upgrade your train. And aside from the stations, which reward you with these bolts, there are 2 additional ways to get these. Throughout every level, and when I say level, I mean the sections from station to station, you'll always be able to find an extra bolt lying around in what's usually a hard to reach area. It's these situations where you'll sometimes need to decide if the team has enough time to go get these, or if they should continue focusing on building the track at the risk of losing the game. And since this is technically a roguelike, losing the train means game over. Unless you turn on checkpoints in the menu.
Super Weenie Hut Juniors!
The final way you can get these bolts besides at the stations and finding one in each level is by doing the optional objective that pops up at the beginning of each one. And these are my absolute favorite because they create some of the most interesting and chaotic situations in the game. By asking players to do something like stack a certain number of resources in a pile, which doesn't seem too bad until the train is about to fall off the tracks and everyone is stacking wood like they're about to have a bonfire. Or maybe the game asks you to dash 200 times, which, okay, that's kind of a lot, but you move faster while dashing anyways, so this shouldn't be that hard. Maybe I'll just dash back and forth for a bit to make sure we get it done. I mean, it's only 200 times, and why is no one else dashing? Only one player is allowed to pick up the bucket. This game is about adaptability and how well you and your teammates can work together to solve problems quickly. You'll always start with the 3 tools at the beginning of a level, but if you aren't careful, they can get left behind if the screen pushes too far to the right, with no way to get them back. Hey, has anyone seen the bucket of water? But there's usually at least one way to get out of situations like this. Like, if you realize you've lost your bucket, then you should try to quickly craft as many tracks as you can, because once the train does catch fire, you'll lose the ability to do this. And if you can get the train to the next station using the tracks you do have, then it will count as a win, and your train won't even start on fire at the beginning of the next station. And you'll find this need to adapt almost everywhere in the game. At each station, the new wagons you can purchase are random, only giving you 3 options at a time. So that one you really like might not show up until much later in the game. Or maybe you've noticed that no one's gotten the bolt in the level yet, but you're quickly approaching the station. So the person placing the tracks might want to create a zigzagging path so the other player has enough time to go get it.
You have to clear your mind of everything else. Stay focused.
Now how the hell am I gonna do that?
While the game does have 5 different modes, including a really neat versus mode where 2 teams race to get their train to the end before the other, the main one is without a doubt the endless mode that I've been talking about. And while it does say endless, there is actually a way to beat it. Throughout each of the biomes, there are these orange bolts that can be found every 3 levels. And if you can collect them all by the time you reach the last biome, then you can buy the credits engine, which, as the name suggests, begins playing the credits. And aside from the game just being fun, it's this hard but obtainable goal that keeps me playing. And seeing the credits for this game really puts into perspective just how much fun can come from such a small team of developers. Unrailed, which was originally named Derailed, was essentially a student project made by a very small group of guys who were attending ETH Zurich, a university in Switzerland, with the theme of that year's game programming laboratory course being Alfred Escher, a Swiss railway pioneer. From there, the group decided to create a game about building a railway, and at the end of the course received so much positive feedback that they considered commercializing it. The group then founded Indoor Astronaut, whose name is a metaphor for people who play video games because, although they are at home, they can immerse themselves into new universes. After that, they went to a few different game shows such as Gamescom in 2018 and Game Connection in Paris, where they teamed up with Daedalic Entertainment, who funded the rest of their development. Later on, they would also partner with Bilibili, who would publish the game for them in China, and is the reason for why these 3 characters are in the game, as they are the company's mascots. The game eventually went into early access in 2019 and fully released on September 23, 2020, with it becoming the first of their universities to become commercially available. I love small indie dev stories like this, because these types of games almost always come from a place of passion for games, and you can feel that in Unrailed. These guys initially thought that they wouldn't see any financial return on the game, but after a bunch of streamers picked it up and more people began discovering it, they saw the sales numbers change. And they didn't just abandon it either. Aside from adding crossplay for every version of the game over the last few years, their most recent update happened in March of 2023, adding a new underwater biome that can be randomly found as you travel through the others. And this might be the first time that I actually enjoy an underwater level in a video game. That's not all though. In what has to be the most perfect timing ever to an almost comical degree, like I was quite literally hovering over the upload video button, did they just announce a sequel to this game, which looks to completely expand their original ideas, adding things like choosing your own path, 4 vs 4 multiplayer, a level editor, and a whole lot of other crazy stuff. So this is now absolutely the perfect time to jump in and try out the original before the new one releases. This game has such a simple concept, but it was executed with so much care. From the art style, to the music, to the absolute chaotic fun that can be had when you get a group of 4 people into it, Unrailed is a game that you should try out at least once, because I really think you'll have a good time, as long as everyone stays on track. Am I really gonna end it like that?